Sawadee Tukon, and welcome to the first episode of BL After Credits, a BL podcast where we talk about BL series beyond the screen, what they teach us, and what sticks with us after the series end. If you haven't watched the podcast intro yet, I advise you to do so because this is where I explain how the podcast is going to work, how each episode is going to be structured. So it just gives overall a little expectation of what to expect from each episode. So if you haven't watched the intro yet, go watch this and then you can come back. For those who watched the intro, welcome to this first episode of BL After Credit, and today we're going to be talking about Love Upon a Time. So as you know, before diving into the deep stuff, the life lesson and everything, we're going to talk a little bit about what the series is about, who is in the cast, what production agency is it from, and all those kind of stuff. So let's go with the intro. So overall, Love Upon a Time follows the story of Nakun, a university student who is quite unlucky, to be honest. And as he's struck by a shooting star, he ends up traveling to the past in someone's body who is named Clau. I won't say too much because this part of the podcast is not meant to have spoilers in it. So this is basically the trope, the overall story that we're following throughout the series. As for the cast, I'm pulling out my notes because I cannot remember their full names. So the cast is composed of Net Sirapop, JJ Ratchapon, Kim Pong Saton, and Latte Tanuchon. So if I mispronounced any of this name, I am truly sorry. I just do not speak Thai, so obviously it is quite hard for me to know how to pronounce this. But this is for the cast of Love Upon a Time, and it is a series produced by Domundi or Mendi TV. I personally already love Domundi production. Most of them, they are really qualitative. I think the visual quality is higher than most other series in the industry at that point. And honestly, what I like most about Love Upon a Time is the fact that we've seen time travel tropes and series many times, and yet they managed to bring something new to the story. And this is probably one of the biggest, good point, I'd say, of the story. With that said, let's move on to the second part of this podcast where I share my opinion on the story. Let's go to the review. As for Love Upon a Time, there is honestly a lot of good points, in my opinion, to say about the series, but just a little heads up, I will focus first on the production part, more like the technical aspect that I liked in the series, like the editing, the production, the direction, all those little details, and then I will move on to something more fan-like, a bit more of like my genuine reaction to the story and what I liked and didn't like. So to begin with the technical part, one thing I really like, as I said, in Love Upon a Time, but that is honestly valid for any Domundi series, is the visual quality of the series. Like, the visual is so well done. The color grading is beautiful. We can definitely see that this is a historical drama just from the color grading, so this was very well done. All the framing and shot are really well framed. I don't like using the same word twice, but this is just how it is. I think the framing is really good. It always deserves some kind of purpose, and it also does a great job at showing what the setting is, like the decor and everything, because I think the decor is a major important part of the series. In that case, since it is a historical drama, we need to see where it happens to believe that it doesn't happen in our time. So this is one thing that I really liked about the series. Another thing is about the editing, actually. I really liked the sort of holographic, like 3D effect that they put on the flashback that Nakun has when he's in the past and he thinks about his present life, especially the time traveling literature course. This was a very specific course to have, by the way. But when he has these flashbacks about this class and what the professor said that sort of applies to what he's living at the moment, there is this sudden 3D effects on the video, and I really likes it because it gives layering. It gives layering to the image, and it gives this sense of passing by multiple dimension, which is exactly what Clau has been doing and is doing when he's thinking of another timeline. So this is one thing I really like because the visual supports what's happening on screen. Like he's going back in time, or maybe like he's moving forward in time. I don't know which way to put it, but he's moving like through time, and the visual does the same through this sort of 3D layering effect. So this is one thing I really liked. And another editing point that I cannot skip is, of course, about Latakim, because if you know me, you know that this is now my favorite ship. So of course I have things to say about them. But one thing I did love about the series is closer to the last episodes when T and Pan in the present life are getting together, and there is this reflection on the TV screen of Kao and Tom in the past getting together as well. I simply loved this scene. This was probably my highlight scene, with of course the most emotional parts of the story, but this, like in terms of editing and visual and like message, this is one scene that I really enjoyed, because Jom and Kao, although we know they get together in the past, we never have an actual scene of them portraying their love this much. We don't get that, because in that lifetime, of course, it was not like as open as it is today, so they sort of had to hide it. And so I really appreciated the fact that, in a sense, they did not show Kao and Jom getting together in that way in the past, because it fitted the not the concept, but like the timeline, right? It fits the sort of like historically accurate setting. But the fact that they show it through a reflection in the TV screen in the present day, now that is genius. That is genius, because honestly, it gives conclusion to the past life without crossing this like historical accuracy, in a sense. And this is something I deeply appreciate from the series. So, and obviously I love all this sort of like reflection, you know, it's like it's Pan and T, but it's still Kao and Jom because it is their past life. So it sort of like beautifully mixes the two lifetime, which I think is just wonderful. Honestly, I loved it because it really gives a conclusion to their story in a beautiful way. So that's about it for the editing. But those are the 2 points that really like marked my memories. Now, as I said, I really did enjoy the overall story, and the fact that it brings something a bit new to the going in the past situation, because now there is the whole like opium case and everything. And one detail that I quite enjoyed is also the timeline, and I mean the timeline of the series, because if you put everything back in chronological order from the past life to the present life, everything makes sense. Because towards the end of the series, we get to know that there is actually a bit more complexity to the timeline than what we thought. Because Nakhun is not the only one, I mean, he is the only one who traveled to the past, but we know that Pop also got his memory back. So there is a bit of like specific, like there is a lot of changes in the timeline that we never know before the last episode, and that sort of shakes everything up. Like everything that we knew so far is sort of like shaken up, but once we put everything back together, it still makes sense. Nakhun going back to the past, all the changes that he made, the first past versus the second past, like after Nakhun went, everything just falls into place, and that is so satisfying, because it is very easy to mix up such a timeline, honestly. And there are very few series that do not mix up, that do not have like this sort of gap in time when they play with time like this. So this is something I deeply appreciated from Love Upon a Time, because everything falls back into place once you replace it, no matter which way, whether it is in the order of the series, whether it is in the chronological order, everything falls back into place, and I love it. So I think that's about it for the technical part of the story, I'd say. One last thing I have to say is about the acting. At first I thought I wouldn't like JJ's acting. Don't come at me, do not come at me, please. I'm not done yet. Basically, I have a little issue with JJ's acting, in the sense that sometimes he's acting like he's an actor, like he becomes the character that he plays, right? He's really into his character, especially during the emotional scene. I'm thinking when he's going back to the present and he calls for Pop and he's like, Mom, take me back to Pop. Like, oh, just thinking about this scene almost makes me cry. But this was a very intense scene, and I think he did a really great job at portraying what Nakhun or Clow is feeling at this point. It is not JJ acting and speaking anymore. It is really Nakun, his character, um, living, right? But there are some points in the story, and I'm thinking especially about the funny scenes, where honestly I do not like the line between his character and himself as JJ as an actor is very very thin, to the point that it really seems like it's just him playing around. And this is something I'm a little like not confused but unsure about, so I'm waiting to see him in maybe a more serious role, because Nakun did have a very like goofy personality, and I think that played a big role in it. Probably if he's into a more serious role, he won't have this such a duality in his acting. Um, but overall, he did really great. Obviously, as I said, the most important scenes in the series are played very, very well. I think he did an amazing job, and of course, so goes for Net and for Latakim as well. I think everyone did such a great job, even apart from the main characters, the main actors. I think every single actor or actress and every single character in this story was played so well, because it is the kind of story that it didn't feel like I was watching a series. It felt like I was really diving into a universe. It was a full-on universe. I was immersed into a story that is not mine, that does not happen around us in this time. And I think that was wonderfully done, because this is the whole point of what series are supposed to be, right? It's supposed to take us someplace else. And I think Love Upon a Time did an amazing job at that. So, yes, that's about it for the technical part. Now, for the fan part. I simply love the series. I think you get it at that point, but that was a really good series in my opinion. While there was some part that I was a bit unsure about at first, the more I went into the series and the more I was into it. Like every week when I reached the end of the episode and I knew I had to wait 7 more days to get the next one, I was on the verge of like jumping out of the window, because I was like, there is no way I can wait 7 freaking days for the rest of this. I needed the next episode like at this moment, at this instant, at this very instant, because everything was so on point. And like, I don't know, there was just, I feel like there was both um Nakun and Pop, or like Clow and Pop stories, but there was also Keo and Jom stories. Their story was also so compelling. Like you genuinely cared for them. You liked them as characters. You wanted them to be around. Like when they go back to the present time, and we see them come back as like the hotel staff. I was so pleased. I was so happy to meet them again. So yeah, I just think overall every single character and every single story was so compelling to me. I loved all of them. Even the villain, like of course we don't like them because they're the villain, but to some extent I like them because they really build up the story. Like I just love that. I was so into it. I genuinely fell in love with Latakim at that point. You got it. I'm in love. Okay, I'm in love with that ship. I just I simply love them so much. And their story was so heartbreaking at first. Like when Gao is going to Jomin is like, well, if there is a next life, I hope, like, I won't even lay eyes on you. Oh no, please don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. I was so depressed. I was so depressed. No, honestly, I think everyone did a really great job. Um, I was so into it, and this is one of the rare series that I genuinely miss. Now that it has ended, I really miss it. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish there was a new episode of it, like next week. I don't know, just make it come back already. I miss them. Just give them back to me. I don't have much more to say in terms of like fan reaction, because the series have ended for quite a few weeks already, and yeah, this is just overall my reaction. I had a lot of technical points to touch upon, but emotionally speaking, I was almost crying my eyes out during the very emotional scene when Nakun is coming back to the present and Pop is left in the past, and that we learned that Klaus sort of really had his first death. Like everything is so heartbreaking. Everything is made in such a heartbreaking way, and if you look at the details, everything is so much more heartbreaking. So overall, I don't know, Domanji is just out there to break my heart, to break our hearts, I want to say, because I know I'm not the only one who cried my eyes out for those scenes. So, yeah, I just, I think we all have the same opinion on this series. It was definitely so good, but it was also so heartbreaking. And the more you look into it, the more heartbreaking it is. But that definitely remains a good series, and I love it. And I wish I could rewatch those kind of series, but I know I'm gonna miss it way too much if I rewatch it. So yeah, I just like to keep the first watch experience as a good memory for now. So now it is finally time to move on to the next part, which is the last one, which is the after credit. So in this last section, we're going to talk about what the series Love Upon a Time teach us, or at least teach me in a personal opinion. This is not meant to analyze or share or promote what is meant to be the main message of the story. This is definitely not the goal of this podcast or this episode. I just want to share a personal interpretation of the story, or at least part of the story in this case. It is something that I want to share with everyone because I believe it applies to everyone, like this kind of life lesson. But the interpretation itself is personal, meaning it's not what probably the director had in mind by making this series. It is just a life lesson that I personally associated with the series, given the characters, the story, the context, everything. So yeah, this was just a little reminder so that no one is confused. And now let's dive into it. So for today's life lesson, it is about letting go. It is about letting go, and I want to share with you why I think letting go and forgiving is something you do and you should do for yourself and not for others. And I specifically chose to associate this life lesson with Love Upon a Time in reference to Kao and Jom. Of course, I had to talk about Light to Kim again. So in their case, I'm going to talk specifically about the character of Kao, because in the past life, when Jom refuses to be with him and does not acknowledge his feeling or their love for each other, Kao has a very big grudge. He holds a huge grudge against Jom, and he even decides to take it to the next life because he puts this sort of like curse on them. He's like, in the next life, if we meet again, I shall not lay eyes on you, and if you love me, like, yeah, I will not love you, and I shall not lay eyes upon you even if you love me back this time. And at first this may seem logical because Gao is very hurt by what John makes him um, feel, I guess. Like everything he does, everything he says, it hurts him quite a lot, and I understand that. But then what we see is that in the present life, he's not sad because he does not know about the love of, in the present life it is T, but in the past life it's Jom. So although he does not know about Jom's love, what he felt in the past life, and that he wanted this love and that he receives it now, we can see that he's still a bit annoyed and upset about how T is pursuing him so damn hard. Like, bro is trying, okay? Bro is trying, but as he made this curse, like as he put this curse onto them, he uh he does not reciprocate his feeling this time. And again, while he's not sad, or like this does not hurt him in the moment, after Nakun goes back to the past and changes everything, like sort of fixes things up for them, we can see that Pan is actually quite happy with the situation, like the relationship he's building with T, because he's like, well, T's actually a good guy, and we can see he's very much in love with him. And we also learn at the same time that while the situation of not being in love with T did not affect him at first, the dream that he was having about his past life did affect him and did hurt him, because he was saying something about like waking up and always feeling sad and crying or something like that. So definitely we can see that to some extent it did bring him even more sadness. And this is where we reach the life lesson. The moment Gao let go of the grudges, so of course Nakun helped him get rid of the grudges. He was like, "Are you sure you want to do that? Like, are you sure it's a good thing to like bring it onto the next life and stuff? Are you sure you're gonna be happy with that?" And that is what I want to touch upon, because what Gao wanted by doing this, like putting this curse on him and Jom for their next life and everything, what he wanted was for Jom to not have a happy ending, to not be happy the same way he was not happy at the moment by the way Jom was treating him. But what he did not realize is that the bringing this like sadness or this not happy ending onto Jom was actually also bringing sadness to him. Indirectly, he is only prolonging his own sadness. And this is why I think forgiveness and letting go are things that we do not do for other people and for the one like who hurt us, but we do it for ourselves. Because the moment Gao let go of the grudges he has in the past and decides to break the curse, we can see that he's happy both in the past and in the present. So of course, it is a fiction, so they had to bring the happy ending and everything. I get that. I get that. But realistically speaking, this whole situation makes sense. The fact that he actually finds happiness the moments he gives up on getting his revenge, and he just decides to like, okay, well, if you don't love me, then you don't love me. I'm not going to curse us. I'm not going to like blame you. I'm like, let's just be. And that is when he actually ends up finding his happy ending, both in the past and in the present, which is also why I liked so much the editing of like Tien Pan and Gao Jam in the TV screen, because it really creates that bridge of the happy ending in both timeline. That was just a little like flashback to this, but yeah, we can see that in the end, by holding the grudges, he was not like, while he was trying to hurt Jom, he was also hurting himself. And maybe if he hadn't let go of that grudge, both in the past and in the present, him and Jom, like in the past, him and Jom, and in the present, him and T would not have ended up together. So to like, in that sense, he would have just brought the like unhappiness upon himself. And because I know that this is a work of fiction and people can just think like, oh well, but this was just the happy ever after of like the fiction work, let me share with you one anecdote of my own life experience that taught me this life lesson. So basically, a few years ago, I had this group of friends with whom I was talking to every single day. And one day I was a bit down and I needed them to be there in a specific way for me, and they were not. So we had an argument, a big argument. And after that, I stopped talking to them like completely. I put them out of my life, and I was very angry at them, because I thought like, oh, I was there for you so many times, but the one moment I needed you, you were not there for me. And so I was blaming them for that. And I cut them out of my life to some extent, and thinking like, oh well, if they're out of my life, you know, I don't, out of sight, out of whatever the the saying says. But you know, you think that once you cut people out of your life, everything is resolved, like, oh, the problem just does not exist anymore. But that was definitely not the case, because every single time something reminded me of them, every single time there was something that brought me back to this friend group, I was thinking back to this argument and how much they hurt me, and how they seemed to be fine about it. Like, they kept living on their lives as if they never hurted me, as if the fact that they hurt me and they lost me as a friend did not affect them. And that is something that really affected me too. It was like something on top of something on top of something. It was a bunch of layers like that, just felt like so heavy on me, and that made me feel even more and more angry at them. And I was holding such a huge grudge against them, because again, I just wanted them to be there as friends, you know, because this is what friends should do. This is what friendship is about. It's like being there for the other. But in the meantime, as I cut them out of my life, I also worked a lot upon myself, And I realized that at that time, at the time that we argued all together, I did have my parts of wrongdoing in the story. And I did acknowledge that on my own. I realized that, okay, actually, part of what they were saying was right. I did exaggerate something. I did act in a certain way that maybe was not appropriate. But that does not, like, at that moment, I also had the right to act this way based on the way I was feeling. Like, the realizing that I did something wrong did not discredit the way I was feeling back then, and it certainly did not discredit the way I acted back then, because of course when you are emotional you tend to act a certain way, not necessarily always the right way, but it is your right to act this way, because what you feel and the way you act upon it is only up to you. Like, there is, like, people can criticize it, but at the end of the day, you know, you do you, I do I, and whatever. So I realized that I did something wrong. I did not think like, oh, then I shouldn't have said all that. No, I still believe that the way I acted back then, I couldn't have acted any other way, because I was feeling hurt. I was feeling hurt, and so of course I had to act a certain way upon it. But then I was like, okay, now that I know that, I was like, what can I do? Because these girls have moved on from there, but I did not. I was still stuck in that freaking moment, in that past that was haunting me. And from time to time, like randomly, my mind would just be like thinking of that group of friends and like how we argued and how they're not my friends anymore. And I realized that I was probably the only one doing that. So I was like, okay, I need to get this out of my head. I need to get this out of my way, because it was only hurting me. It was not hurting them. The fact that I cut them out of my life, probably, like, maybe they were hurt for a moment, but now it's getting better, you know? So I was the only one still feeling hurt about this incident. I was the only one still thinking about it. So after about a year of not contacting them, I decided to send them a message. And this is where it gets tricky, because I sent them a message, all of them, every single one of the friends from the friend group. I sent them a message, and some of them replied, some of them did not reply, but that did not matter to me. That did not matter to me, because in the message I was apologizing for the way I behaved at that time, but still saying that, well, they hurt me, so it was my right to act that way. So I realized I had my wrongdoings, but that do not erase their wrongdoings as well. This, like, both exist at the same time in the same situation. And because I was able to get this out of my chest, to get it, like, out just simply, and to express it to the people who were concerned by the situation, it did not matter anymore if they were looking back on it, if they were reflecting on it, if they still feel hurt, if they moved on. I did not care, because that was about me and how I felt regarding the situation. How I felt regarding the situation. And so some people did not answer me. I did not, I did not become friends again with most of those people. They are still out of my life to this day. But that does not hurt me anymore. I do not feel hurt, because I realized that, okay, maybe we were not that good friend, maybe we were not that compatible, but mostly because I was able to let go of the past and what happened. Like, if today there was one of them who came back to me and be like, oh, can we be friends again? Probably I'd say yes, because I really moved on from this moment that hurt me, this specific moment that made me feel bad. And I forgave them. But again, forgiving them does not mean that what they did was okay. It does not mean that I am, it does not mean that I think what they did wasn't wrong or wasn't bad towards me. I still think the same. Forgiving does not erase what they did. It does not erase that. It simply helps me to accept what they did. Instead of feeling angry at it and like getting stuck on it, it helps me to just accept, like, okay, they did that and that's it. Now let's move on. Now let's go to the next step, meet new people, better people, maybe, who knows. But that is one point I really want to emphasize, because we often think that forgiveness just it feels like a free pass for others, like for the one who hurt us. It feels like we're saying to them, like, oh, it's okay, you can hurt me again. But that is really not the point of forgiveness or forgiving at all. That's why I really love the sentence, forgiving not for forgiving not forgetting. Forgiving is not forgetting. It's two different things. Just because I forgive does not mean I forget what they did, and does not mean I just, you know, like brush it off and be like, oh, it was nothing, never mind. No, that's really not what it is about. But it brushes off the bad feeling. It brushes off the angriness. It brushes off the grudges. It brushes off all the bad energy that this moment still holds for you. So this is really what I wanted to share. And I think that Gao and Jom's story really reflects that life lesson so well. Um, Especially because I think it is not a life lesson that we get to see often in BL series. So I think this specific um, series and their specific story really illustrate that so well. And my anecdote was a bit long, maybe, but I wanted to share a little bit in details the whole process of like working on yourself and realizing your wrongdoings in order to be able to process the the incident, or like whatever happened, it is like whatever it is that you hold grudges for. So this is what I want you to remember after hearing this first podcast episode, is that if you are feeling hurt by something, if you are still angry about something that happened in the past, if you still hold grudges towards someone, let it go. Please let it go, and do not do it for them, but do it for you, to be able to move on and to leave it in the past where it belongs. That is the second sentence that I love most in this context, in this whole letting go life lesson. It is when people say let things in the past where it belong, and this is something I did not get until I realized this kind of stuff, because to me I thought, yeah, but my past makes up my present, so of course I have to remember, of course it sticks with me. But this is not what it is about. What we mean is, like, you have the memory of it, of course, but especially if it's negative, you should leave the negative feelings in the past, because whatever you think, whatever you're still feeling towards this specific moment in time, it will not be back. It is gone already. It is past. So feeling angriness, feeling like whatever you're feeling towards that moment is not going to make anything any different. It is only hurting yourself, because again, when you're feeling those negative things, it is you who are feeling something. It is not the person who hurt you. It is not like the culprit of like whatever situation you went through. They are not the one who are feeling those bad emotions. You yourself are the only one who are feeling this, so it is only hurting yourself. So this is why I want you to remember to please let go of all the grudges that you may have. I know it's easier said than done, but if you can work on that, I promise it will be worth it. So this marks the end of BL After Credit first episode. I hope you liked it. If you did, well, drop a like, drop a comment, share with this one with some friends. You might have some like friends who are also BL fan who might be interested in those sort of takes on the series. So do not hesitate to invite them to join us in 2 weeks. I would be so happy to have more people on board. And don't hesitate also to share your own life experience or your own interpretation of or life lesson that you could get from Love Upon a Time. Again, the goal of this podcast is to exchange as much as possible around the series that we like. So please do share your experience and your thoughts, because I am here for that. I am here for that. So thank you again for joining and tuning into this first episode. I'll see you in 2 weeks for the second one. And cut.